If you asked me how my life was going that morning, I probably would have said, all right. I woke up at 6:45, same as always. Brewed the coffee, burnt the toast, kissed my wife on the cheek while she barely looked up from her phone. Normal stuff. Routine. Comfortable. Except the coffee was cold by the time I sat down. Not because I waited too long, but because she forgot to turn on the machine. Again. You forgot the coffee, I said, not accusing, just noting. She looked up, blinked like I'd just interrupted a board meeting, and said, then reheated. No smile. No apology. Just that flat, bored tone that had slowly crept into her voice over the past year like mold behind wallpaper. That's when I first felt it. Not a scream. Not a slap. Just a chill. Like the warmth had been leaking out of my marriage drip by drip, and I only just noticed I was standing in the cold. She started working late more often. Sometimes till 9. Sometimes overnight conferences that didn't involve flights or receipts. Then came the perfume. Not her usual subtle lavender, but something expensive and loud. The kind of scent that enters the room before she does. New scent. I asked one night as she walked in past 10, smiling at a text that she swiped away too quickly. Just a gift from a client, she said. Must be one generous client. She laughed. Not at my joke. Not with me. Just laughed. Like I was an audience member who missed the punchline. I'm not paranoid by nature. I don't go snooping. But when a man's wife changes her passwords, starts sleeping with her phone under the pillow, and doesn't notice when you stop saying I love you before bed, even the slowest man starts connecting the dots. So I did what any sane, quiet, absolutely devastated husband would do. I started watching. And let me tell you something. When you stop looking at your marriage as a life and start treating it like a crime scene, you see everything differently. I watched her patterns. Watched the wardrobe shifts, the workout routines that ended without sweat, the way she started texting in the shower. I watched her the way you watch an animal you love turning into something unfamiliar. I didn't say anything. Not yet. That was the trick. People make mistakes when they feel safe. When they think you're not watching. I had time. And I had patience. Because what she didn't know was this. I'd already started planning my exit. Not just from the marriage. From the man she'd made me become. And that was the most dangerous part. They say love is blind, but betrayal has 20/20 vision. By week 2 of my quiet watch, I had stopped hoping I was wrong. I was just collecting details, inconsistencies, slips of the tongue that didn't mean much to her, but they meant something to me. She started dressing nicer for casual Fridays. Red lipstick, heels, a new blouse that still had the boutique tag the first time she wore it. I noticed the receipts tucked between pages of her planner, hotels, wine bars, lunch spots 2 towns over. Then came the gym bag. Not her usual worn one, but a sleek designer duffel. Inside, not gym clothes. Silk, lace, and a pair of heels. I didn't touch anything. I just memorized it like evidence at a crime scene. She told me she was going to yoga. Came back smelling like champagne. I didn't ask. I just smiled, handed her a towel, and noted the timestamp on my phone. She thought I was going soft, but I was sharpening. I installed a second camera in the garage. Just a dash cam. Nothing fancy. But it caught everything. Her late returns. The car pulling into the driveway at 11:47 p.m., 12:32, 104. Sometimes she came back alone. Sometimes she didn't. That was when I stopped being sad. Sadness is a kind of hope, twisted and bruised, but hope all the same. I wasn't hoping anymore. I was preparing. I took a sick day from work and drove to her office. Didn't go in. Just parked across the street and watched. She wasn't there. Not for the full 3 hours I sat with cold coffee and a notebook, tracking every car that pulled into the lot. At 11:08 a.m., I saw her, walking out of a coffee shop 5 blocks away, arm in arm with a man in a navy blazer and smugness stitched into his smirk. He kissed her cheek. She didn't flinch. I didn't react. I just clicked the shutter on my phone. And that, my friend, was the moment the investigation turned into a case file. She wasn't just lying. She was confident in it. That meant she didn't think I'd ever find out. And if I did, she thought I wouldn't have the spine to do anything, which is exactly what I wanted her to think. By the 3rd week, I was operating like an accountant for emotional embezzlement, documenting every transaction, every inconsistency, every casual betrayal dressed up as normal life. I had names, dates, photos. I had screenshots of hotel bookings made from our shared card, even though she always paid with her personal one. A few charges slipped through. One dinner in Chicago while she was supposedly at a women's leadership seminar. A spa receipt from a place that doesn't open past 5 p.m., timestamped 9:47 p.m. The thing about lies is they age poorly. They wrinkle. They fall apart under scrutiny. I synced her phone to an old backup device she forgot was still logged in. Nothing invasive, just enough to see her cloud uploads. Photos mostly. Some innocuous. Others, not. Her smiling over dinner with a man's hand clearly holding hers. A hotel room selfie where she's wearing the same earrings she said she lost months ago. Funny thing is, in the reflection of the mirror, you could see 2 toothbrushes. Not ours. Not even close. I went quiet at home. Like a background actor in a life she assumed I'd stopped caring about. She came and went. I cooked. I cleaned. I did laundry and folded her clothes just like always. But I didn't kiss her anymore. I didn't say I missed her. I didn't ask where she'd been. And that's what really got to her. Because indifference is louder than shouting. And silence? Silence is a confession she never expected. One night she asked, "Are you okay?" I looked up from the sink, rinsing out her wine glass. "Yeah," I said. "Just tired." She studied me, maybe for the first time in weeks. But she didn't push. She couldn't afford to. Because she knew, deep down, the moment I started asking questions, real ones, everything would unravel. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to beg. I just needed to let her keep lying. Because the truth? It was almost done printing. Revenge doesn't start with rage. It starts with a spreadsheet. 3 tabs. One for evidence, one for finances, and one labeled simply, exit plan. Every login, every payment, every late-night client dinner that came with a matching hotel receipt. I wasn't just preparing to leave. I was preparing to win. I called an attorney, someone a buddy from college recommended. Guy specialized in divorce, privacy law, and asset protection. When he heard what I had, he whistled low. "She's not going to see this coming," he said. "That's the idea. I didn't want a messy divorce. I wanted a clean break. No alimony. No shared house. No rumors to twist the story. I wasn't going to tell people she cheated. I was going to show them. Subtlety is underrated. One quiet dinner with her boss's wife. One polite conversation with the HR department. One envelope dropped off anonymously with a flash drive labeled personal use of corporate time and resources. I never had to raise my voice. I let the evidence do the shouting. The night before it all went down, I watched her walk through the door like she owned the place. Shopping bag in one hand, phone in the other, smile already forming as she typed. She didn't notice I had cleaned out half the closet. She didn't notice the spare keys were missing. She didn't notice I'd unsubscribed from our joint Netflix account. But what she would notice soon was the lawyer's letter on her desk. The email to her company's ethics board. The moment she realized all her passwords were no longer hers. I was done playing husband. I was done being the backup plan. At 2 a.m., I walked out the front door for the last time. Didn't slam it. Didn't pause. Just drove. Left the ring in the kitchen drawer. Left the heat on. Left her to clean up the mess she thought I'd never uncover. Because this was no longer about heartbreak. This was architecture. And I'd just finished building the exit she never thought I'd take. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving. Not my brother. Not my coworkers. I left the city like it owed me nothing, and I owed it even less. 3 days later, the first cracks began to show. My lawyer called. She's furious. Threatened to contest everything. Until she read the documentation. Now she's quiet. Quiet was good. Quiet meant damage control. The HR report landed the same morning as my absence. Her name was flagged in a misconduct complaint. 2 hours later, she was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. She texted me that night. Just one word. Why? I didn't reply. I rented a cabin 3 states away. Remote. Peaceful. No distractions, except the occasional crow tapping the window like it wanted in on the gossip. I watched her world collapse from the woods. Through voicemails, through bank alerts, through mutual friends who still hadn't figured out where I'd gone. She's been asking around, one said. Looks like she's spiraling. Good. Let her spiral. She spent months climbing a social ladder built on brunches and borrowed charm. She cared about her image more than her integrity. So I didn't attack her character. I just printed the facts. And let the facts destroy the fiction. I heard from her sister first, then her old friend from college, then the HR director at her company, who just so happened to be a guy I'd sold a house to last year. The message was always the same. We didn't know. Of course they didn't. That's how people like her survive. Smoke, mirrors, filters. But filters don't work in court. And in court, I wasn't a man grieving a broken heart. I was a man with receipts. A week later, she finally called. I picked up on the second ring. She said nothing at first, just breathed. Then, you're really doing this. I already did. A pause. Then, you didn't have to ruin me. I didn't, I said. You did that all by yourself. I just turned the lights on. Click. I stared at the silent phone, not with anger, not even satisfaction, just clarity. This wasn't revenge. This was relief. And for the first time in years, I slept without grinding my teeth. There's this strange thing that happens after a storm. Silence. Not the eerie kind, but the clean kind. The kind that feels like a fresh page. I didn't expect to miss anyone. But I did. My barber texted. Just said, "You alive?" My neighbor, the guy with the noisy dog, asked if I'd moved or just gotten better at ignoring his basset hound. And my brother left me a voicemail that said, "You don't owe anyone an explanation. But if you ever want to come fishing, I've still got your pole." I called him. We didn't talk about her. Not once. Just water levels, the new boat motor, and whether bourbon ages better in glass or oak. Turns out, talking about nothing with someone who knows everything is better than therapy. I started running again. Not from anything, just out of habit. My lungs burned the first few miles, but there was something cathartic about moving forward, literally. The cabin turned into a temporary home. I got a part-time gig helping a local guy fix up old barns. Something about sawdust and splinters grounded me in a way no city skyline ever could. Every once in a while, I checked the news back home. A promotion missed. A position quietly vacated. A profile photo changed. She was fading from the world she tried so hard to impress. But I was reappearing in my own. The last piece of mail I opened before forwarding everything to my lawyer was from her. Handwritten. For pages. Apologies. Explanations. Excuses. I read it once. Folded it neatly. Tucked it back into the envelope and slipped it into the fire. Not out of spite, but because I'd already heard everything I needed to hear. The silence after was warm. Not empty. Peaceful. And that felt like healing. The first time I laughed, really laughed, was over something stupid. I dropped a jar of pickles, and it bounced instead of breaking. I stood there, barefoot on a wooden floor, holding my stomach and laughing like an idiot. Grief doesn't always leave with a goodbye. Sometimes it lingers like dust in sunlight, visible only when the light hits just right. But joy sneaks back in when you're not watching. I planted a garden. Tomatoes, peppers, some mint that's already getting out of hand. I know it sounds mundane, but there's something deeply satisfying about growing things, especially after so much of your life felt like it was withering. I also started writing again. Not for anyone else. Just little things. Observations. Pages that began with "Today, I noticed," and ended however they needed to. No audience. No expectations. The quiet became comfortable. The loneliness, less lonely. Turns out, peace has a learning curve. I saw her once, months later, at a grocery store, of all places. We didn't speak. She looked at me like she might say something, but then she saw the cart I was pushing, full of fresh produce, paint samples, a bottle of wine, a life rebuilt. She turned away first, and that told me everything. I'm not bitter. That's the part no one expects. They want rage or redemption, but all I feel now is freedom. And maybe that's the real story here. Not about betrayal, but about how a man can lose everything he thought mattered and still come out whole. Wiser, calmer, lighter. There's no dramatic finale, no courtroom explosion, no grand speech. Just a man in a quiet house, with a good cup of coffee. Finally warm.